Hey everyone, let's talk about what I've done in September. First of all, I uploaded another letter to a month to September, and I really like that idea and I like that you like them, so I think I'm going to continue with those. Apart from that, we had a lot of great discussions this month. We talked about going out alone, and a lot of you agreed with me that there are similar things that you have trouble with doing alone, and others said like, no, I love going out alone. And also others were like, no, really not my thing. I really liked your comments, and also that we agreed upon that the more you do it, the better it gets. Another discussion we had was about groups and belonging to groups and what that does to us and if it's a good thing and a bad thing, and I really enjoyed your comments about that. It was very diverse. Some loved it, some hated it, some really couldn't bother, and it was very interesting. Thank you all for your input. And we also had discussions about books. We talked about expectations we have in books, and the marketing thing was like, this is a new this is a new that. And we all agreed that too many expectations are harmful for the book, but it's really hard to not raise them. But when it came to comparing books to others, you really like the idea if you say like, if you like this in books, you will like this book. And if you like that in book, you will like that book. So comparing a part of the book, not the whole book, but just an aspect of it. And I think I really like that because that's what I'm also doing. And just for funsies, I had a look at how I was doing with the Read Harder challenge, which I hadn't set out to do. And I was doing pretty well, and I'm quite happy with that. So for me, going back to reading how I feel is much better and much more diverse than trying to fulfill a lot of challenges. And I like that. Now let's jump right into the books that I read. I finished and reviewed Nightwood by Juno Barnes, and I really liked the writing in this book. I'm not completely sure about the story. It was a little bit confusing and complex, and I think I really have to reread this again at one point to really comprehend what it was going on. I also finished and reviewed Shipwrecks by Akira Yoshimura, and I liked the writing, but it was very repetitive. There was nothing much happening, and it felt a little bit boring at points. The story is based around the repetitiveness and the sameness. And so this is part of the story, but it's not really captivating and interesting. Another book I read and reviewed is How to Be Both by Ellie Smith. And I really enjoyed this book. It's very well written. There are two parts. You can start with either one. And I started with the painter's part. Some books start with George's part. So that depends on what you read first, unless you know about it in advance and you start with the second part. And I really enjoyed the painter's story a lot more than George's story. But I also, the more I think about it, enjoy how these two stories are connected and how you can only get the full picture and understand George's story only with the painter's story. The painter's story could work alone, but George's definitely is lacking unless you know the part from the painter's story. And of course, I've also read and reviewed The Shepherd's Crown by Terry Pratchett, the last book in the Discworld series. And despite being sad that the series is over and we will never get any more books, I really enjoyed this one, and I really think it is a good ending. Just a warning, don't start here. This is the last book. You will be spoiled for a lot of things. This is also set in the Tiffany Aching series, so if you just want to read that, it's very accessible. It's more in the YA sector. The next book I haven't really finished yet. I still need another 50 pages or so, but I really don't want to talk more about this book. Coyote Blue by Christopher Moore is not what I expected. I started it last weekend thinking like, oh, it's gonna be a weekend read and then I can go on to the next book, but it's been dragging. I don't think it's that funny and as funny as I expected from his books, and it's interesting, but I don't really feel myself captivated by it. It's a story of this young man who had to flee his reservation. He's an Indian. He had to flee the reservation when he was 15, and then he became a salesman and very successful at that. And he calls himself a shapeshifter because he's really good as a salesman, shifting personalities and always knowing who he has to be to sell to that person. But then something happens and the old trickster Coyote turns up in his life again, and everything becomes chaos. And in the beginning it's rather interesting, but as the story progresses, I'm just like, oh, just get it over with. I also finished and reviewed one audiobook. It's A Fictional Woman by Tara Moss, and I really liked that story. She is my age, so I thought we have like a sort of similar mindset because I could understand her a lot better than I could Emo O'Toole. And I liked how she talks about her life and her experiences and then connects it later to feminist or statistics and theories and experiences and things we maybe should look at and be aware of. And there were a lot of interesting facts in that book that I wasn't aware of. Some I knew and others I didn't, and I really thought it's very interesting, and it's not preachy. I like that it wasn't preachy. Editing Wiebke here. I just realized that I didn't tell you that I listened to Trigger Warning by Neil Gaiman, and probably because I didn't care for the book. I really didn't like his narration. Everybody always keeps saying that you need to get his audiobooks read by him because he's doing an amazing job with that. And I found his voice unbearable. I sped it up on double speed just to get through it. And also the short stories, I didn't really care for them. And I was really disappointed because, I love Neil Gaiman's books, but short stories were just not for me. And that was my September. I really had a good month. Tell me about your September, and let's hope October will be nice as well. Thank you all for watching. Bye bye.